How's it going, everybody? It's Frisby Moonsong here. Yow! And today what we are going to be doing is we are going back to our beginner guide, as you can see in the thumbnail over here, and we are going to be talking a little bit about knowing your game and how to start shifting from the more casual player. Let me just unbrighten this. There we go. Is that better? I don't know. Anyway, how to go from a little more of a casual player more into slightly going into the competitive side to get better at your plays. So we're going to be giving you a little bit of advice just on how to how to understand interactions better, and what to focus on when moving to a more competitive environment. Now, starting off, one thing that's very important in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh is priority. Priority of an effect is passed over when one player declares the activation of an effect or has performed an action. The opponent will get a chance to respond. So there 9 times out of 10, you should have the chance to respond. But now there are different situations with regards to if and when effects. Now, usually if effects will happen if something happens, and usually starts a new chain, and these cards 9 times out of 10 do not miss timing. And then when effects usually have to happen directly, it has to be the last thing in the chain to happen. For example, if you make an example of Paleozoic traps, the last effect to happen is a trap has to be activated in order for their grave effects to summon themselves. Or for example, a Thunder Dragon Titan, I believe it is. If you discard a card from hand, Titan can also activate itself to destroy a card on the field. However, if another card is chained to the activation in hand, you are able to stop Titan's effect from being activated in the first place, because the last thing that needs to happen is the discard from hand. But because of the passing of priority, it makes things a different story as well. So that's one thing that you can watch out for when it comes to learning effects and stuff. One thing people get very or struggle with is the battle phase, especially the idea of damage step. Now, there is obviously damage step, there is a before damage calculation, during damage calculation, and after damage, or the end of the damage step. So there's like 5 different phases in the damage step that happen. So you enter into the damage step, there's before, there's during, there's after, and there's the end of the damage step. Those are different effects that do happen. Now, effects that can activate during the damage step are specifically cards that activate during the damage step, or let's say before damage step or damage calculation, and also any card that negates an activation directly. So something like an Ash Blossom will not work in the damage step, because Ash Blossom directly negates the effect, not the activation. So cards like Solemn Strike will work in the damage step because it specifically negates the activation. Also, cards and effects that change attack and defense value. For example, Forbidden Chalice is a really good example of cards that can activate during the damage step, because they specifically change the attack and defense, or defense value, which is really good. So those are the cards. Those are like cards that can actually only activate during the damage step. There are some cards that have specific restrictions that say this card can be activated during the damage step, so those are things to watch out for. And there's some cards that obviously says this card cannot be activated during the damage step, even though it may do something like half attack or something like that. For example, Lost Wind. Lost Wind is one of those cards that I believe cannot activate during the damage step, so you gotta watch out for things like that. Now, also one thing when it comes to getting into the competitive scene is know your decks. Know what you're going to be facing, know your own deck and how it interacts with everything else. Also try to figure out weak points and choke points of other people's decks. Things like that are very important about knowing. Also, know your meta, so know what decks you are going to be facing a lot. That is probably first most, because if you know your meta, you know what you're most likely going to be facing, and then the amount of decks you have to know lessens, so that kind of helps you with being able to know what decks you're going to face. A lot of the time you can beat someone just by knowing their deck better than they do, but also don't give them advice during like big tournaments and stuff. If they make a misplay, let them make a misplay. This is war, unless it's at a locals. I do encourage you to help people out out with helping how their deck works and everything like that. But and I understand for regionals and big tournaments like that, there's no need for that. You're not obligated to do that. Let me just say. So it's just knowing, if you know how your opponent's deck works, you know all the choke points to hit and what will hurt them the most, and usually nine times out of 10 you can anticipate what they're gonna play in their deck. Obviously side deck choices and tech choices are the differentiations in decks and what they make, unless someone comes up with some crazy combination. But those side deck and tech choices, really some people don't expect coming, they don't see it coming. People won't see a Raigeki coming because everyone's playing for lightning storms, like things like that, you know. Those are things to think about. Like no one will expect to see a lava golem in meta play. I'm not saying play lava golem, because it doesn't always work for everything, because you obviously still need your normal summon, but then at the same time also no one will see it coming, that kind of thing. So usually there's a general consensus of cards that people actually play in the current meta, and if you look around that, you'll be able to see what is like what you will be encountering in these tournaments. Obviously you will come against like these rogue decks that come out of nowhere, like Unchained. Like there's not many Unchained players, but you will face one, and if you don't know how it works, it will hurt you. Just read the cards. I know that's something that people don't say often, but like literally, if you specifically read card text very carefully, you can actually see what your opponent monster does, and you can stop them quite heavily. For example, I play Altergeist, so I can say this. Altergeist Melusik does not search for a card if it does not hit the field. So it has to leave the field from the grave in order to search a card. So if you can get it to the grave without it hitting the field, that is one way for them to reduce their resources really highly. So that's something else that you can also look out for. You know, it's about reading card specifics. Read the specific text carefully to help you out with how to defeat certain decks. Like there's some cards that specifically say if this card is destroyed on the field, if this card you control. Also, there's a difference between you control and in your possession. So in your possession is any card that you own that's either in your graveyard, in your hand, on the field, wherever, or in your extra deck even. But cards you control are only cards that are on your field currently. So those are like little wordings to be very careful of. And also there's obviously new rulings that just came up with leaving the field. Like for example, XZ material does not count as being on the field. The monster does, but the material does not. So there's things like that to look out for with regards to these sort of cards. Even like I said before, when cards can sometimes miss timing. For example, if you think about a card like Dupe Frog, it says when this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a frog from your deck to your hand. However, if it's used for link summoning, the last thing to happen was the summon, not the card being sent to the graveyard. So therefore you cannot search for the card because another action has happened blocking it. So there are things like that you have to look out for, but it is about knowing what you're up against and knowing how your deck interacts with all these things that you are up against. That will really, really help you in the future and really, really actually help you with the card game in general to get better as a meta player. Just knowing exactly what your opponent's going to do next really, really helps. Knowing the basic combos, knowing your own combo off the back of your head. Because also if you know your own combos like the back of your head, you don't need to focus on your own deck. All you need to do is focus on what your opponent's doing, and you can stop what they're doing. So figure out what your deck does. Make sure you know it to a T by the time. I mean, some people are like, oh, I'll play this last minute. But if you look at Yu-Gi-Oh, there's patterns everywhere in the game. There's cards that specifically add from deck to hand. In every deck there's usually a normal summon that's crucial, or there's a special summon that's crucial, or there's a search effect that's crucial. Look for these key little interchanges. Or there's a point where if a monster on the field leaves the field, they literally can't come back from it, which makes it very, very difficult for them. For example, with Salamangrates, I would say 7 times out of 10, if you return the normal summon to the hand immediately, they can't do too much, and it makes it very, very difficult for them. So that's something like, there's like choke points of decks that have weaknesses, and you just gotta find those and figure out what each deck has, because there are patterns, and a lot of decks are very similar in playstyle, just with differentiation of how they go about it. And there are very strong patterns within decks to find. I mean, one piece of advice I can give you is that, as much as Yu-Gi-Oh is a skill-based game, sometimes it's your day and sometimes it's not. It's literally, you you can go and go XO in like 3 tournaments in a row, but then one day you will have a tournament. It could be the biggest tournament ever, and you open the brickiest hands ever, and it can be no matter what deck you play. I mean, obviously, some decks are more consistent than others, and if you're playing a really lower tier deck, that's probably not going to happen as often, but or that's probably going to happen more often. The bricks will happen more often, but if you're playing a higher tier deck, it won't. So sometimes you just have a bad day and you go against a matchup that or your matchups are just like against you, or they always open every out and you don't open. Sometimes you have those, and I think one thing with Yu-Gi-Oh is you must learn to accept things like that, is that sometimes you're gonna have a bad day, and you know what, that's okay, because your day will eventually come where you need to make it to the top. And for all of you guys, I really hope that happens one day and we start to see you in the top tables, because I think Yu-Gi-Oh players in South Africa, we're getting there. There's a lot of you guys, and you guys are getting good, so thumbs up to you. And from me, Frisby Moonsong, hope you guys keep working at it and don't give up. Trust me, don't give up. I know there's a lot of people like leaving with the COVID situation, but trust, don't give up. I love the game with all my heart. I've been playing it for about five years now, I would say, so keep going with it. So for this video, I'm going to be giving away 3 Cyber Strike structure decks for you guys. It's gonna be, yeah, you guys can get your impimps from it, so I'm not giving it all to one person. There's gonna be 3 people that are gonna get, so each of you will get 1. So all you need to do is comment in this video, what was the first deck you ever got that you felt put you up there in the competitive scene? Let me know, and you could stand a chance to win this, thanks to our sponsors Solarpop and Unplug Yourself for getting us these. And thank you so much for watching this video, you guys, and I hope we get to our goal of 300 subscribers. We've got a month left, so 300 subscribers by the end of the year. It will probably be a great Christmas present. But you know what, if we make it to 250 even, that will be okay. But let's aim for that 300 subscribers. But thank you so much for the support, you guys. And from me, Frisby Moonsong, I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers, guys. Yo! P.S. We're also entering a regionals at the end of this week. Yes, on Saturday. So wish us luck, and we hope to see some of you there at Geek Home. Cheers, guys.